Kaya po,
Hindi, sir, sagutin yung tanong ko, huwag tayong paikot-ikot. Kilo na nga ako, paikutin mo pa ako, di lalo ako.
I hope we do something about this, Mr. President. We will look into their performance next year, Mr. President, and I will be the first one to give them a 1 peso budget next year.
Can't understand. It really boggles the mind. Why? Because it boils down na sa tingin ko, kulang ang puso natin para sa ating mga kababayan when it comes to government service. The lone clerk that refuses to talk to yung nakapila po dyan dahil hindi niya type at hindi niya aksyonan yung mga request ng mama na nakapila dyan ng buong araw, all the way to the passport section of the DFA na who refuses to handle your papers because bad mood lang siya, to the agriculturist in the DA who refuses to release the budget to the beneficiaries that's supposed to be for them. It's not your...
Juncture, I move that we consider the budget of Philippine Center for Post-Harvest Development and Mechanization. And we acknowledge the presence of its officials led by Director Junicio Alvindia. And move to recognize, Mr. President, the distinguished author, sponsor, of the filmic, no other than Senator Cynthia Villar. I so move, Mr. President.
Before we recognize Senator Cynthia Villar, I'd just like to put on record there are 15 senators down here in the in session as well as in the lounge. Just for the record, I'd like to thank each and every one at 1:19 in the morning. I'd like to thank everyone for their hard work. So we'd now like to recognize our distinguished colleague, Senator Cynthia Villar, to sponsor the budget of PhilMec.
Mr. President, I want to suspend the rules of this hearing, and I want PhilMec to answer the questions of the senator directly. Thank you very much.
May we know who would be asking? Who's the minority floor leader? Out of duty. So, okay. We'd like to recognize the minority floor leader, Senator Coco Pimentel.
Na, sumagot siya dito.
I ask for a minute suspension, Mr.
Session
President.
suspended for a
Yes,
minute.
Mr. President, the distinguished sponsor, I think made the motion, if I'm not mistaken, to suspend the rules. We join the motion of the distinguished sponsor of the measure that we suspend the Senate rules to allow the resource person, I think, if I'm not mistaken, distinguished sponsor, the director for PhilMec, Director Junicio Alvindia, to directly answer questions from the members of the Senate. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection to the motion of the majority leader? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I will be the first one to ask question. May I be recognized, Mr. President?
The majority leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Director Alvindia. You're the head of PhilMec, sir.
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, Mr. President, let me state for the record that in the budget deliberation of your mother department, Department of Agriculture, sir, you were not around. May we know the reason why you were absent during that budget deliberation, sir?
Thank you, Mr. President. I was not around during the budget deliberation because I was part of the DA delegation to attend the Agritechnica in Germany. The purpose of which is to have a to seek talking points for the purpose of the visit of the president by next year. And one of the reason of doing that is I enticed the European machine manufacturers to manufacture their machine in the country so that we will have a sustainable sources of machine, because I firmly believe that the machine should be manufactured in the country, not only rely on importation, Your Honor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. But were you aware that at this time of the year, nagaganap ang ating budget deliberation?
I'm aware, Mr. President.
So you think it's more important or equally important? But you managed to go abroad, to go to Germany instead of attending our budget deliberation. So you feel that it's more important. Am I correct?
I believe it was an equally important opportunity for PhilMec and for the Republic of the Philippines.
Okay, I will no longer belabor the issue. Mr. President, doon po sa ipinasa nating batas noong 2018, RA 11203 or an act liberalizing the importation, exportation, and trading of rice, lifting for the purpose the quantitative import restriction on rice. 5 billion po or 50% ng Rice Competitive Enhancement Fund ay nakalaan po para sa rice farm machineries and equipment. Ang mekanisasyon po ang inaasahan ng ating maliliit na magsasaka upang gumanda po yung ani nila at tumaas yung kanilang kita. Dagdag pa po sa 5 billion, Mr. President, meron pang additional 100 million para sa extension services na mapupunta rin sa PhilMec. Bukod pa po ito sa taunang budget ng ahensya. Is that a correct statement, Your Honor?
Yes, correct, Mr.
Thank
President.
you. Hindi po nagkulang ang Senado sa pangunguna ng ating Chairperson, Senator Cynthia Villar, sa pagbibigay ng pondo at suporta upang maging competitive ang ating pong domestic rice production. For this reason, we have been demanding that the implementing agencies, especially PhilMec, to step up its implementation of the law. Now, my first question, Mr. President, is can the distinguished Director Alvindia, give this institution an overview of the PhilMec's accomplishment this year compared to last year, Your Honor? Ilan pong porsyento yung na-disburse na ng PhilMec sa ngayong taon po?
Ngayong taon po, Mr. President, we obligated 5.8 billion, equivalent to 73.85%.
That's obligated, sir. Ang tinatanong ko po, yung disbursement for 2023.
Yes, Mr. President, our disbursement is quite low, only 3.11%.
Ano po?
3.11% po.
3.11% ngayong taon ang disbursement po ninyo.
Opo.
So, busy nga kayo. Maganda ho yung ginagawa ninyo. 3.11%. So, ano ang dahilan? Bakit 3.11% ang inyong performance? Nung isang taon po,
Ang disbursement nung isang taon, Mr. President, was 42.93%. 45.16%.
45.16% ang disbursement nyo po last year.
Opo.
So from 45.16%, ngayon 3.11% po. Katanggap-tanggap po ba yung 3.11%, Your Honor?
Mr. President, we're still working on the payment of...
Tanggap-tanggap po yon, sir. Kung kayo yung nasa posisyon ho namin na laging tinutuligsa, laging pinagrereklamuhan, kami po sa Bulacan, marami ho kaming farmers doon, laging lumalapit sa opisina, nagtatanong, nasaan yung pondo? Bakit di magamit yung pondo? Akala ko ba tama yung ginagawa nyo? Eh, dyan sa Senado, nagpasa kayo ng batas, etc. Tapos bibigyan nyo po kami 3.11% performance. Katanggap-tanggap po kaya yon?
Mr. President, this is... the record is as of November 15, 2022.
So hindi ko katanggap-tanggap. Salamat po sa inyong sagot. Tapos na ho yung taon eh, sir. Hindi ko alam kung may natutuwang senador na nakikinig sa atin ngayon, pero yung this year po, ano po yung available appropriation nyo? Kasi kanina binanggit ko, Mr. President, distinguished the minority leader, out of the 5 billion, nung 50% Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund na nakalaan para dun sa machineries and equipment, out of that, may dagdag pa na 100 milyon para sa extension services na mapupunta rin sa PhilMec. So ano yung total ng budget ninyo na meron pong 3.11% disbursement rate at this time na matatapos na ho ang taon?
7.9 billion, Mr. President.
7.9 billion. So yun po yung totality, no? Tapos 3.11%.
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mga kapwa ko senador, nakakatuwa po ito. Lalo na pag ganitong oras nagtatrabaho pa po tayo. Sir, anong level na po ba yung mechanization sa bansa?
Ang level po ng mechanization natin ay 2.67% or nearly 2.7 horsepower per hectare po.
Pagkatapos po ng 6th year of implementation ng batas as indicated in Section 13 of the law, 2.67%.
The level was as of last year.
As of last year. So currently, nasaan na po tayo?
We are
Ano yung target level na mechanization level ng bansa sa pagdating po sa rice?
Mr. President, if I may say that the 30 billion, because we have 5 billion a year times 6 years, we have 30 billion. And for the 2.7 million hectares of our rice, we are only calculating to mechanize 14% of the 2.7 million hectares.
Mr. President, noong pong 2020, ang saad po ng Department of Agriculture, kailangan natin ng mechanization level na 4 horsepower per hectare para makapagsabayan po tayo sa mga bansa sa Asia. Correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Sponsor. 2020 target pa po ito. Shouldn't we be settling higher goals by now, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. President.
So bakit hindi tayo makapag-set ng higher goals?
Because the level of mechanization depends on the number of the machineries we are
And the performance of the agency, which is 3.11% at this time. Am I correct or am I right?
As of November 15th, 3.11%, Mr. President.
So it's the performance of PhilMec. How does PhilMec prioritize its mechanization program for each region?
We have criteria to reckon with, Mr.
For
President.
example, Region 3 of Senator Angara in this representation. Sa Region 3, which is the largest production of palay in the country, has a mechanization level of 2.62 horsepower per hectare, which is below the national average. Kasi ang national average is 2.67 horsepower per hectare. Is that correct? Now, in contrast, you look at Region 2 of Senator Nancy Binay, the second largest palay producer has a mechanization level of 3.51. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr.
bakit
President.
ganon? Anong nangyayari po? Ano bang criteria nyo po and strategy for each region? Na mababa na nga po yung target, hindi pa rin ma-reach.
Universal naman po, Mr. President, yung ating criteria. The farmer cooperative should have at least 50 hectares.
Yung for all crops, mechanization level is 1.23. Bakit po ganon? Because these figures indicate that primary production is still greatly dependent on manual labor. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, may I also just put on record, Mr. President, na a lot of our kababayans in Bulacan are having second thoughts of the law that we passed here in this Congress, because the implementors are actually not doing their job. Let me just put that on record, Mr. President. I will end my interpellation to the Director of PhilMec and just state for the record my utmost disappointment, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senator Alan Cayetano is seeking the floor. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Alan
Mr.
Cayetano is
President,
recognized.
I know everyone's tired, but just one question, no follow-up question. Yeah. Promise to my dear friend and future mayor. Sir, sa lahat ng tinanong ni Senator Villanueva, ano target nyo next year at paano mo magagawa yon? So kung napakababa ng 3.1%, kaya nyo ba next year ng 6.2% or ng 8% or 4%? Kasi this is a budget deliberation, di ba?
Yes,
So
Mr. President.
every single agency wants money. So why give money to someone na hanggang dito lang ang kanilang kaya? So very honestly, if we give you the resources, ano kaya nyo next year? And kahit maikli lang, paano nyo magagawa yon?
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, this 2023, by end of this year, we can obligate 7.4 billion or around 94%. And starting this month, we already had our advanced procurement worth of 3.5 billion for the next year, Mr. President.
Thank you for that, but you didn't answer my question eh. So for next year, sinagot mo yung paano yung this year. So for next year, kung 3.1% this year, kung next year nakaupo ka rin dyan sometime this time, ano malamang i-report mo sa amin? Ilan % ang nagawa nyo for next year? Anong target nyo? Target nyo ba mag 80%, mag 70%, mag 60%? Para lang klaro, no?
We target 100% obligation for next year, Mr. President.
Okay, and how can you do that compared to this year? Anong problema this year na next year hindi na mangyayari?
May mga carry-over po kami ngayong year na ito, Mr. President. Pero by end of this year, we will have to complete that.
Para hindi humaba, sir, pwede bang isubmit nyo na lang written?
Opo.
No, na this year, kasi ganito. Hindi mangyayari next year dahil ganon, di ba? Para maging example din naman, hindi lang sa agri, pero sa iba pong mga ahensya na kami naman po kung makakatulong na ma-deliver, di ba? Pero hindi naman pwede kasing every year may dahilan. Because people don't understand process or yung hindi na-deliver, di ba? So, I mean, we can explain the whole night, pero it's either nagawa natin o hindi, di ba? I mean, many here are no strangers to the bureaucracy, to local government. Many here were cabinet members, were head of bureaus. Senator Win was mayor, Senator Revilla was governor. So, you get what I mean. No? Lahat kami dinaanan yan na, bakit 20% lang na-deliver mo? So, I'll stop there, but please submit that kasi whether it's you who's still there or iba na po position nyo, will hold your agency to that position. Na eto ang dahilan, bakit hindi, pero next year, eto dahilan, bakit magagawa namin to.
We will comply, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to, again, put into the records, Mr. President, 45.16% yung disbursement of funds last year, ngayon 3.11%. Yung ipinagmamalaki po kanina ay obligation rate. Pag ako ay naging secretary ng TESDA, madali yung mag-obligate eh. Madali yung mag-obligate. In-obligate mo yung pondo, etc. But the main job of PhilMec is to ensure that you will be able to distribute the machines, the equipment. So meaning to say, dear colleagues, in the past year, ang na-distribute 3.11%. Kaya I'm just disgusted, Mr. President, coming from Central Luzon, as I mentioned earlier, largest production of palay in the country. So, Mr. President, I will just ask the resource person to just give us a data comparing the current mechanization level of each region and the volume of production, as well as the mechanization strategies for each region for next year. Para naman mabantayan ho natin, at pag nagreklamo ho sa atin, yung mga kababayan natin, ituturo ho natin at patatawag natin, hihingi ho ako ng tulong sa sponsor natin, sa chairperson ng Committee ng Agriculture, na ipatawag po natin, magkaroon tayong pagdinig dito, at kinakailangan mag-file ho ako ng kaso, gagawin ko po yan. Thank you, Mr. President. And with that, I move that we... Pen ko muna eh. Dudus, wala na eh.
Lift na.
No, wala na eh. Wala na dito. No, wala na eh. No, but wala na eh. I lift the root? Not anymore. Because we are... I will not lift, I will not move to lift the suspension of our rules, Mr. President, but instead, we will move to another agency, Mr. President, which is the Philippine Coconut Authority, led by its administrator, Bernie Cruz. May I also move that we recognize Senator Mark Villar to ask some questions, Mr. President. So move, Mr. President.
Yes, the objection, there being none, motion is approved. Senator Mark Villar is recognized.
Salamat po, Mr. President. This is the second time that your agency was called here to the Senate. I'd just like to ask, where were you the first time po? Di po kayo naka-attend sa first hearing ng Department of Agriculture?
Good morning, Mr.